Hello and welcome to another episode of the Christian Reeve Podcast. Today's guests are podcasters and business professionals hailing all the way from Atlanta, Georgia. They go by the name GenXX. Welcome to the show. How are you guys doing?
Thank you. I'm doing well.
I'm good.
For a minute, I was like, are you okay? Is everything all right? This is the second time we've done this where I've had multiple guests. It's a little bit new for me. The first time was about a year and a half ago or something. And I recently had to update my Zoom to facilitate it. But I've got some questions together that are specific to both of you and then just in general, and then we'll see where we go. There might have to be taking turns or something like that. We'll see how it goes. But so you're planning to start this new podcast. I don't know. I mean, when I got this information, you were starting it. So I don't know where on that kind of scale you are at now, if you've started it or if you haven't. But what I do know about it is that it's all about Generation X. Is that right? Tell us more about that.
All right, so we started off with a conversation between Quiana and I, and we were talking about life and stuff. And we also have these kids, or we have Gen Z kids.
All right.
And we were like, why don't we just, impart our wisdom, because basically Gen X is basically, we're sandwiched between baby boomers and we're sandwiched between Gen Z. And millennials, and nobody talks about our generation. Nobody. And they even lump us into baby boomers. It's so annoying. I'm like, I'm not that old. My mother is a baby boomer. I'm 44. Nah, there's a huge difference. So
yeah, I've noticed this. I'm a big fan of professional wrestling, for example, and I've noticed that the boom period for that particular industry was the 90s, which would have been prime Gen X kind of, and that was a little bit before my time. I grew up as a 90s kid / 2000s, so I'm more in that millennials kind of group, if you want to put it like that. But I still remember a lot of the stuff from the 90s, and obviously I've gone back and checked out older stuff, and I can see that it is very kind of distinct. There was a lot of counterculture stuff going there. It was a lot of arguably reaction to baby boomers and what society was putting out, especially if you look at the media around the time and TV shows and stuff. You still had those TV shows where they were trying to do kind of family vibe sort of sitcom type things, but then there was a lot of programming that was kind of get against that. I mean, why do you think Gen X is not spoken about as much as it should be?
Because we were taught, I remember when I was a kid, my mother always used to say, kids are to be seen, not heard. And that's what we were taught. Am I wrong, Quiana?
Right. Yeah. And I think it still has just stayed that way, is that I don't know, we're not that important. And I feel like that's the whole reason for us wanting to start this podcast, is just to show that we are important. The things that we're going through, stem from the way that we grew up and the things that we went through. And it's important to speak about that and just let everybody know that, yes, we're here. We've gone through things. And I don't know, to tell people what you can look forward to once you get to this stage in life, I think.
It's interesting you say it's not important. I mean, I would obviously disagree with that, and I'm sure you both would as well. But it's, I don't know. I suppose maybe it's to do with the fixation on what's going on in society at the moment, because obviously with previous generations, at one time that was the dominant generation, and it moves forward, and then the older generations, they either adapt or they still live in that time. Now I've noticed that, for me, I get very nostalgic about, the late 90s, 2000s in particular, but I recognize that's no longer the world. That was then, this is now. And sometimes you can almost kind of recapture that feeling in a song or a TV show or whatever, but it's past, it's gone. The world is different now. And it seems crazy to me that every generation almost kind of battles with one another. I mean, it makes sense from the perspective of if you've got different opposing views and whatnot. I get the difference between, say, a baby boomer having a comment on Gen Z and vice versa, because there's going to be conflicts of interest there because the perspective is different. But then I know a lot of people from that generation who are very, let's say, progressive, and they've just moved with the times, and they get it, and they understand that the world keeps changing. But again, I just want to press more on how Gen X is not spoken about as much. I mean, I think there's a lot of nostalgia, as I mentioned before, for the sort of programming of the time. I feel like now in society you've got essentially like a 90s revival, because that's one thing that always does come back is the revival sort of thing. So 80s is always eternally cool, so is 70s, I think. But like with 90s now, that's coming back, and you're seeing it in fashion, and you're sort of seeing it in programming. One thing I wanted to ask you guys about is, what do you make of a lot of the TV programs now that are beginning to talk about the 90s and Gen X?
I find them funny. Cause like when I just not too long ago I was watching I watched the first episode of that 90s show.
Right.
I was like, they were talking about Alanis Morissette. I was like, I had the CD. Yeah, I'm that old. I had the CD. I was like playing that, like her first album, where they were talking about grunge, and I was like, yeah, I was into Nirvana and stuff like that. Then I was also then you see like other 90s, like BMF, they're talking about the 80s, and I'm like, I remember parts of the 80s because I was a kid. Both of us were kids in the 80s,
Mm-hmm.
so we were feral children. So yeah, I remember like all this stuff from the 90s. Like you were talking about TGIF. I remember like Full House, and they had that whole comedy line. Or my favorite on Thursdays, Keanu, remember we were in the house, and then there was like the Cosby Show first at 8:00, and then there was a different world at 8:30, and then Cheers and all the other stuff. I remember all that. I was there for all that. So it's kind of funny that they're bringing back, especially fashion, bodysuits. I had a bodysuit, I'll never forget, in like high school in '96. I'm like, they're bringing this back? Seriously? All right.
Yeah.
Should save my clothes.
And that's why I think that's part of the reason why I feel like maybe forgotten is not the word, but when you think about it, like how everything is coming back to like stuff that we used to do in the 90s, like the way we used to dress, the plaid, the platforms, and just like you said, the music, even new music is sampled off of stuff that we did already. So I think it's
I go back and forth on that, because sometimes it will be something clever that's used in a different way, and it changes the song up, or sometimes it's legit just taking an old sample from an old song and then just rapping over it. Like there's a song in the charts right now that's done exactly that, and it's an 80s or 90s tune, very 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 well known one, and it's a good song. Like the person that rapping over it does a good job, but it's not different. It's just, do you know what I mean? It'd be like if I took, I don't know, let's say Nirvana to Swaz at Teen Spirit, and then I just sang like in a country style over it and sang something totally different. It's like that's not changing the song, really, is it? You could argue it's transformation, but it's not really. I don't know.
Yeah,
right.
It's not, because like for me, good sampling is like, for instance, like with 90s gangster rap, where they took stuff from like the 60s and the 70s, and they took a sample, like it's sometimes even like a really short song from a 70s song, and then several other samples, put it together, slowed it down, and then changed it into something else. Or something like that. That's really clever, I feel. And that changes it up, and that you could argue that's truly a new song. But yeah, I don't know. We could debate all day about that.
I think that's the thing that I think about the music now, is that they don't. We used to do that, but like you said, it would be like small samples of like different pieces, instead of like just using the entire song and basically not even changing it up. And it's like, really? You have no imagination.
I'll play devil's advocate there. There are artists that do it well. Mac DeMarco is a good example of that. He likes to sample a lot of like old Japanese jazz from like the 70s. He did it famously on Chamber of Reflection, I believe, that big hit. And he basically took like a really like chill jazz piece from the 70s and then switched it up and played a different version of it, kind of like with synthesizers and stuff, and he turned it into something else. And that's like a really good example of like a modern artist doing it well. So there are good artists out there, but yeah, there is a lot of laziness too. So
I'm not saying there aren't any good ones.
Sure.
I'm just saying that there's a lot where it's like, okay, give us our props. We gave you a lot, and
we paved the way for
don't
you.
Forget where it came from.
Pretty much, because it's like Lady Gaga for me reminds me of like a newer version of Madonna.
Yeah,
she's doing the same stuff Madonna did, and I'm like, I've seen this before. Or like any new acts, I'm like, I've seen this before. Am I this old? It's not about being old. I've just seen it's like there's nothing new under the sun. And I guess that's why like my musical taste stopped at 2004, because after that for me, it just seems the same. I'm like, okay.
I will say a lot of the artists that I listen to, and I know it's cliche to say this, but it's true, they're like lesser known or they're not as prevalent in the charts. That's where I find the most interesting stuff to be. Occasionally you get something in the charts that will be interesting, but even if you take someone like Harry Styles, for example, the tunes are bops, they're all right, but like if you really break it down and compare it to what has been, you'll find tons of songs that sound similar. You know, it's so I guess it depends, doesn't it? Like how far you want to go with it, how mainstream music is versus how lesser known it is. One good thing about now is being able to discover music. It's much easier now. Like back in the day, obviously, we were buying CDs, tape cassettes, whatever. So I mean, like that's how I learned about a lot of artists, was just going to. So we have a store in the UK called HMB. Back in the day, it was a lot bigger, and you go in there, and like I'd go. For instance, I grew up on rock and metal music, so I'd go and look at their collection and be like, "Oh, this looks terrifying. Let's get this." And that's how I discovered a lot of music. But then other stuff was like for me, I played a lot of skateboarding games growing up, and I loved skateboarding, and that's how I discovered like a lot of hip hop from the 2000s and the 90s, and then other video games like Grand Theft Auto and stuff like that. That had a big influence, and through that you then discover several other artists, you know, and it's amazing stuff, really.
I mean, for like you got to discover like that part. Imagine going back further. And especially if you're in a place like Denver, Colorado. And this is the 80s. Don't think of Denver, Colorado now, where it's all pretty and modern. No. You got to think of Denver, Colorado in the 80s, where we used to say that everybody in the world would get something before we did. So basically, let's say if Tupac was around, we'd probably get it like a year later, and our music stations were not really playing stuff. Right. So we had to rely on like MTV or word of mouth at school. So it's like if somebody's playing like a cassette or something, if somebody's playing a cassette at school, we were listening to it. We were like, oh, that's fat. You know what I mean? We were like, that is so cool. So it's different how. We also got our stuff from radio. So we would like take the tape. It had a blank tape, and then we record it from the radio, and then that was our mixtape, So it was like before Napster came out, we were already dubbing tapes. So I'm like, when they started getting mad, like the artists, especially Metallica and Dr. Dre, and I'm like, we were dubbing tapes off of radios. What are you talking about copywriting? We were passing that around. That's what DJs were doing back then, So I'm like, it was hard to discover music when we did in the culture. It was like basically word of mouth. We didn't have, much. And like I said, especially from Denver, Colorado, you just relied on the other kids, what they were doing. You had no reference.
Absolutely. I remember my mum telling me a story about how she would record the top 40 charts in the UK. And obviously, like, you'd have the DJ talking over it. So you'd have to learn when to stop just before the DJ's talking, stop your recording, let it go for a little while, and start recording again.
Yeah.
And that's what we did.
Yeah.
That's how a lot of mixtapes got made.
See, my generation is a bit different. What we would do is we'd burn CDs. So we would download a bunch of stuff online, anything we could get our hands on, but we ruined all of our computers with programs like LimeWire and FrostWire, stuff like that, Napster, all that. and just completely fry our computers so that we could get like, I don't know, Foo Fighters back catalog or whatever, and just put it onto CDs. And I have like some mixed CDs that I made from back in the day. So it's basically the same thing, just a different generation. But now all that's it's just changed. Like there was a bit of excitement around doing that, and now it's just you just go on online and find whatever you want. It's kind of taken the fun out of it a little bit in some ways.
Yeah,
I
it
don't know.
did, cause like I have a friend who still has his like bunch of CDs. I'm so mad. I lost my CD collection like in the early 2000s, and that was like a built up one. You know, like remember those folded books you used to
Yes.
have? I left it on top of my car and I drove away, and all my CDs are gone. I was like, man,
No.
yes, I was mad. I was like, well, there that goes.
I used to love taking the booklets, and if I really liked what the artwork was saying, I'd stick it on like my walls and my door and stuff like that, and have it there. And like there's old photos of my teenage room where I have an entire door plastered with all this stuff. It's good times, man. It's good times. I think that's a big. Oh, sorry, go on.
No, I miss the artwork too. I do. I really miss the artwork. You don't see that. Like if you download something, you're not looking at the artwork anymore. You're just downloading the song or streaming it now. I don't even download anymore. I stream now.
I suppose it's all about videos now, really, isn't it? If you're particularly into an artist and you want to explore that side of things, then I guess that content will be available on things like TikTok or Instagram or wherever else. But yeah, I mean, you can still get that artwork, as you say. You can download it. I don't know anyone that does, but you can. Maybe if you're more artistically inclined and you just like that and you want to draw the stuff, I get that. But yeah, even just owning the physical medium. I mean, CDs are still, you can still buy them. I mean, there seems to be this resurgence now of, making even like records and stuff like that of new content. Like I've got like a Megadeth record from like 2013, like an actual record that they produced new at the time. So there is like the vinyl revival is strong and well, but I think it's like this back and forth between people wanting to have the physical media and something special about that. But to me, like having like an old record from say the 60s, that means something. That's a bit of history in your hands. But having like a new record from today that's made, it just doesn't feel the same. Like I don't know.
Yeah.
Because I got a record player somewhere at home back in London, and I haven't touched it in years. There's a bunch of stuff in my mum's loft from the day I moved out, but I remember buying some really old records, and one of them was like a Sex Pistols record. It was like a reissue from like the early 90s. Put it in, sounds like shit, but it's great because you hear the crackle. It's like I'm like, yeah, man, it's beautiful.
Like my mother has like old gospel records. I'm like, cause she was heavily in the gospel, and I think she has one from Gladys Knight. I don't know, but she said she used to have a stack, and hers got lost too. She let my uncle have it, and they got destroyed. But she still has her old gospel ones.
That'd be worth a fortune right now.
I know, right? And she said she lost it, and she like gave it to my uncle, and she said she just doesn't know where it is. So I was like, that's gone.
See, that's the thing.
But yeah, I remember the old crackle of the like. I love that sound. You're like the anticipation.
None of us could have anticipated.
Do the new ones do that? I know, like now it's a thing that they're bringing out the record players. They don't.
I mean, well, because it's all new quality, isn't it? Like with the old records, like they would sound good when you first bought them, but then after a while they would deteriorate. And I suppose it would depend on the quality of the initial recording. So if you went back in the day and bought like, I don't know, a Bon Jovi record, that's going to sound pristine, right? But if you bought a Sex Pistols record or something like that, it's going to sound a bit ropey around the edges because that's how it was produced. But just like CDs, just like tape cassettes, they kind of deteriorate over time, and then you get that crackly effect and whatnot. But these days everything is really well made and top quality, so it's not really going to happen unless, I don't know, you scratch the hell out of the CD or the record, I suppose.
Right.
But,
and that skipping thing, like did it.
Oh man,
Yeah.
yeah, that happened so many times to me. And sometimes I thought like I was losing it. I was like, did that happen? And then you're like, oh no, it's just broken. Yeah.
Right.
Especially happened with video games as well. That was devastating when that used to happen. And it starts skipping once you get to a certain level and you're like, no, it's gone forever.
I mean, like the last game I had, and this is sad because I was on punishment. It was a Nintendo, like with the original Super Mario's on it, and I was playing it too much, and I had bad grades, so my mother hit it. And me being the stubborn person I am, I just let it be hit. I didn't even go back and find it until she found it like many years later, and I'm like, I'm out of games now. I don't care about them anymore. So it was like, that's my like, but I have a friend, he's like a true gamer, and I think he still has his, like, he said Nintendo 3S, 3 something, I don't know. And he's like trying to buy up all his video stuff now. I don't know.
That brought back a really random memory for me just then, you saying that. Like, I used to have the same punishment when I used to do things wrong. And I remember my mum would just slowly take things away. Like, oh, well, I'll take away your PlayStation. Oh, you're not allowed TV for a week or whatever. And then I remember just being like, I'll just read then. And I would just sit and read. And then she'd be like, have you learnt your lesson? Oh, what are you doing? And I'm like, oh, I'm reading. And I think that kind of pissed her off a little bit. She's like, because you can't really be angry, but at the same time, it's like, you're supposed to be learning a lesson. And I was like, oh, I'll just wait it out. It's fine.
You too? You too? Because I used to sit there and read too. It was like, my mother had a hard time punishing me. She was like, my punishment was to go outside. I'm like, dang.
Really?
Especially as a teenager. Like, as a teenager, though,
right,
mostly.
yeah.
As a kid, though, we were always outside.
Right.
We had to go get friends. You know, we had like, oh, knock on the door. That's how you learn how to, like, that's how we learn to connect with people. You had to go up to the door and be like, can so-and-so come out and play?
That's something that's changed, isn't it? Like, I mean, I still see kids get out and about playing and stuff. I saw my brothers doing that when they were kids and stuff. So there is still that element, but now that generation is really fixated on games and technology and stuff. And I mean, our generation, that, yeah, as you say, we would just go out and just play outside. It was like, go outside. Like, your parents would just say, like, oh, you've been inside for too long. Get outside. Come back at this time for dinner. It's just up to you to make your own fun. But we did.
Yeah.
I mean,
but not in this world.
I was gonna say, Q, when's the last time your kids were outside when they were little?
They outside where? For what?
Really?
Right.
Wow.
Mine too.
Those phones, those
punishment.
iPads, they don't go outside.
They never want to go out and, I don't know, play baseball or do cycling or something or any of that?
Yeah. No.
No.
Mad. I just don't get that. Because, I mean, even combining the two, because obviously when I was growing up, well, we did have like PlayStation 2. I had those things, but I wouldn't want to always play them. Or like if I did play them with, sometimes it'd be fun to play outside with my friends. And then when we got a bit tired, we'd come in, get some food, whatever, sit down and play together on the PlayStation or whatever. And then we'd get bored and we'd want to go back outside again. I just, you know what I mean? It was a combination of the two. It wasn't just like games and only games. And even to this day,
it's this virtual world. Like they don't feel like, you don't have to really meet people. You don't have to, everything is this technology.
Well,
we can do it through.
I mean, because they are meeting people through that though, aren't they? It's just a different medium. But I think the issue is more that, it's never going to be the same as face to face. And obviously, some of your friends are going to be online. I've got many online that I've met that are brilliant people, and we forged like real friendships. But at the same time, through gaming and things like this, that's like a particular medium. It's like your friends through that medium, and then meeting each other when you meet people
outside
in real life.
Of that.
Yeah, it's different, isn't it? But I think sometimes the issue is there's this problem with differentiating between the two, between online life and real life. And sometimes you can get too consumed in it, and I have to remind myself to step away sometimes, because everything I do, for the most part, I use online as a tool for marketing purposes, for growing, all of that stuff. but a lot of what I do involves speaking to people, like speaking to wonderful people such as yourselves, and speaking to people in live streams and stuff. But it's still speaking to someone and getting something from someone back and forth. But there's a lot of people that don't do that, and I don't know. I feel like in a way it might be a problem for socialization. Not necessarily, but it might in years to come. I don't know.
Like my daughter, she's like 17. She can be in her room, and that's it. If she has her phone, that's all she needs. Damn. And she'll have YouTube playing in the background. But if she has her phone, that's all she needs. I mean, I'm like, you sure you don't want to go meet people? For what? And I asked her, she was like, for what? I'm like, oh, okay.
Wow.
Yeah, it's there. Am I wrong, Quiana? I mean, really.
No, they're real closed off. Yeah.
What do you think that is? If you had to sort of...
have you ever seen them interact? It's so funny trying to get the new Gen Z in a room together. It seems like they're scared. They can't speak to each other. They don't know how to speak on the phone. It's so weird. They're like, but they can manipulate a phone real quick, but to speak to each other. I've seen all three of them because she has $2 and I have one. They're in the same room and all of them are on their phone. They're not really interacting with each other.
Yes.
I don't get this. This is weird. Do you know my generation's guilty for this as well, and I don't get that. Like if I'm out with someone, that phone is in my pocket. I'm not touching that phone.
Yes.
But I see other people like they're on like date night, and there's a couple just sitting there with their phones. I'm like, what's the point? Why? What's the point?
Right?
There's no point. You just might as well be at home.
That's a rule for me, especially like when you're going out to eat or something like that. I'm like, phones away, because why?
Yeah,
we're sitting right here. Put your phone away.
Rude. No one ever told me that growing up that you shouldn't be doing that. I just knew you shouldn't. It's rude. Like,
yeah. And they don't know. They don't know. It's like, why? Why is it a bad thing? It's rude.
If I was a bit old, because when I got my first phone when I was maybe like 10 or 11, but it was like a Nokia 3410 and you could do like nothing with it. So it was never really an issue. But if I'd have been, let's say I grew up later and I had a phone, and like my mum was very strict. That would have been an issue. And I would not have done that. So maybe it comes down to parenting. I don't know. But I don't know. It's a weird one. I mean, as you say, like you interact with your daughter and you say like, well, why don't you want to? And they're just like, I've got everything I need here. And that makes you wonder, doesn't it? It's like, And I don't know. I mean, there are examples in society of where they're trying to get people to go out and do things more together and not use phones. I mean, you've even got things now like retreats where you can go there and there's like no internet, no phones. They take all that stuff from you, which I don't know how I would feel about that. You can walk up to reception like, give us your phone and your passport. What? Is this a robbery?
Right. Especially like, you know how much I paid for this phone? I don't trust nobody. That's like, man. You know what else is funny is that I never thought I would have to pay like $300-$400 for a phone. I mean, again, when we were growing up, you just had the phone in the kitchen.
Yeah.
Or in the living room. That's it. And it was probably at the time $20-$50 maybe, and that was expensive. Now I'm paying like, my phone is like $250, and that's on the cheap side. I'm like, really?
Right, because they're iPhones.
Yeah, you have one. I don't.
I never got that. I mean, I just get what I need. I always do that. I don't care about flashing or anything. I feel like if anything, the more expensive stuff you've got in the hand, the more that's kind of an advertisement for, hey, come rob me. Like it's just like,
right.
Like, why would you want to do that? You know, like when I was a teenager, what I would do is I'd have two phones, and I'd keep the nice one at home. Right. Well, before you get right, because I grew up poor, so I'll explain this. Right. So
okay.
I'd have a phone that I don't know. Maybe I got, let's say for Christmas, my parents would have saved up for a long time, and I got that, and that was the phone, right? But then I'd either have that phone, or I used to break things a lot. I was terrible with stuff like that, and if I would, I'd end up getting a terrible phone. And my mum would be like, "Well, don't you want to try and replace that?" And I'd be like, "No, it's better that I have a terrible phone, because then when people try and rob me, which it happened quite a lot, they would just, like, I remember one time a guy took my phone, he looked at it and he was like, no, you can have that back, man.
Wow. Wow.
So it worked, because they'd just be like, what is this? And I'm like, that's my phone. And they're like, you can't be serious. And I'm like, no, I am. Like, this is. So it worked. But yeah, no, I mean, I don't think I had a nice phone. Now, all the phones I was given were, I either had to save up for a better part of like a year and a half, do things like save my lunch money, not eat and do stuff like that, or this was more common, I would have to wait until someone had a phone that they were giving away or something like that, like second, third hand phone, stuff like that. And that's how I get a phone. So it was always old hand-me-down sort of stuff. But I was never really bothered. Like, even to this day, I don't really care about like having the latest tech. And I feel like if anything now, it's more problematic because like there's no differences between the phones. It's like, oh, I have the iPhone 13. Okay, what's different? Oh, it's got a slightly curvier edge and it's an extra $200. What?
Yes.
Right.
I don't get that.
I mean, I didn't really start, like, I remember, again, I'm being old. In the 90s, we had pagers.
Ah, yeah.
And we thought, I thought I was all that because I had like a voicemail on my pager, right?
Damn, really?
I mean,
wow.
Yeah, I had like voicemail. Like, I did. I thought I was like, I got voicemail. But then, like, I didn't really start carrying the cell phone until my daughter was born. Because now I'm responsible for a life, But before that, I was like, I have a home phone. If you can't reach me, you can't reach me. That was my thing. But now I'm a little attached to it because mostly business.
Yeah.
That's mostly because of business. But otherwise, I'm like, I used to until recently, until somebody was like, you can just stop that. Before bed, I would turn off my phone.
Yeah.
Because I didn't want to hear like the little bing, 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 because it used to wake me up. Until recently, somebody was like, you need to stop that. Because what if I need to call you in the middle of the night? And I'm like, you have my house. I still have a house phone. So I'm like, if you really need me, call my house phone.
I'd just be like, why are you calling me in the middle of the night? What's wrong with you?
Yeah, that too. And then I got family, especially her right there.
I was going to say, in our family, that stuff always happens in the middle of the night. Somebody's always
Somebody's calling you in the middle of the night. I'm like, okay, I'll start keeping my phone on there.
So it better be important. you better be damn near dying or something. And
I'm like, yeah, but you still have my home phone number. Call me on that one. But I just recently, like I said, I started keeping my cell phone on around the clock now. Unfortunately, I'm learning.
It's different with business. I hear that. I mean, the only reason I have the phone that I have now and the social media apps that I have now is purely just because of all of this and the things that I do. If I wasn't doing any of this stuff, I just wouldn't bother. I don't see the point, quite honestly. I mean, a lot of these apps are quite superficial. I mean, Instagram is all just, hey, look at how great my life is and how wonderful everything is, even though I'm actually quietly dying inside. That's basically what Instagram is.
Yeah.
So, no one ever, you never see a photo of someone like on a bad day, like, oh, the puddle in the road went all over my face and, I got fired today from work. Like, you don't see that. That's like, oh, look at me on this wonderful holiday. Oh, look, I just got married. Oh, all right, great.
Yeah, I don't even have an Instagram account. I have no social media whatsoever. I'm like you. I did back in the day. I had like the first Facebook. I remember when it first came out. And then I got in an argument with Quiana right there, and then somebody else butted in the argument. I was like, all right, I quit. It just got stupid now. This is like, we took the family issues, now we're in the public now. I don't even know this person that commented. And I'm like, who are you? Did I see you at the family reunion? No. Get off my channel. So yeah, ever since then I was like, nah, I quit. Because I used to also have a MySpace page.
Yeah.
I had all that. Yeah, I had a MySpace page and I had a Facebook. But Facebook is where I stopped. I was like, nah, you can't find me. If you do find me, it's kind of sad. But if I have no social media whatsoever. None. Oh, except for this.
I'm surprised that you guys don't use it for business, no? The social media.
I used to when I had like my businesses, I had to, but I kept my face off of it.
How about you, Quiana?
I know.
So now we have it for the podcast.
Okay.
We have Instagram, we have Twitter, and I think we're gonna probably start a TikTok because that seems to be a big thing right now. But I'm like her. I had Facebook, Instagram. I actually still have Instagram, but I haven't logged into it for like 3-4 years. So personally, I don't want it because, like you said, I looked at it. I think the last time I logged in a couple years ago, I was looking at it and I'm like, the only time I post something is my daughter's graduating, my daughter's going to a dance, like nothing, and I don't want to see other people. Like, it's like when you know somebody like for real and you see, like, say for instance, I know somebody has, I don't know, a bad marriage, but you see them post like, oh, me and my husband or me and my wife, and it's like, oh, what a crock.
I just feel bad for them. Like I honestly, I'm like, oh, I hope things get better because this isn't the way to.
Right.
I don't know.
Right.
Like, but I guess it's just different preferences, isn't it? Like I'm single. I've been for a long time, but I feel like if I did have a partner, I just wouldn't want to post about it. Like, not because I wasn't proud, but because it's like it's a private thing, isn't it? Like it's.
Yeah.
But I get wanting to share, because, all right, don't get me wrong. I get wanting to share your successes with the world, achievements. Like I've done it. Like it's cool. It's nice. But I think the whole continual updates thing is where I draw the line. Like I don't get that.
Like my breakfast.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Nobody cares if you had a rice bowl. Nobody cares.
Early Twitter was like that. Before everyone kind of figured out how or what to use it for, it was all just like, just had a bag of chips. Just had dinner.
Yeah.
So do we all.
That's it. Yeah. Just, what do you think about that? And then,
but then, the
like,
kids, our children's generation, they look at that all day long. That they're in their phones and that's what they're looking at. Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, and it's like.
Well, the way they communicate is a lot different. I mean, because I would say that I'm beginning to get to the point now where I'm beginning to drop off as far as what I understand. So I try to keep up to date with things just so I know, because my community on TikTok, for example, ranges everywhere from like 13, 14-year-olds right up to 60, 70-year-olds. So it's a very broad range. You get a lot of different age ranges. And sometimes when some of the younger people come in, I don't know what the hell they're talking about. So I have to look up this stuff and kind of try to get an understanding of it. And from what I understand, a lot of the stuff that they post is like visual, it's anime stuff, it's memes. Like I'm fully familiar with memes, but like some of their memes, it's like you need a ton of context in order to understand. And that's where I'm like, what? Like a lot of the time it just comes down to trends and such, but you have to like sit down and do research into this so you can understand what you're laughing at.
Not quick. I mean, because as far as like when you said partners, like my husband, he has Facebook and he's weird about it. Like he gets glee from like, he'll post like throughout the year, right? He'll like, there's a birthday, he says happy birthday, right? But when his birthday comes around, he gets all happy when people are like, yeah, happy birthday, Simon, and then they just post, and I'm like, really? How many people do you actually know? But yeah, him and we don't post anything about us. We're like, nah, there's no need. I see you every day. What we posting for? What we posting? No.
I've seen that when people post to each other and they're a couple, and it's like what? Like you just say it to each other in the house, like happy birthday, baby, I love you so much. Okay.
Right.
Right.
It's kind of sweet. I don't know. Maybe I'm just being Mr. Cynical. I've been single now for so long now.
I mean, I've been married to this man for 18 years. I'm not posting about that. That's something between us. I'm like, what we posting for? Who cares? There's many married people in this world. Nobody cares.
It's awkward when people overshare a little bit too much as well, because you don't know what to make about that. It's like, guys, just pack this up, put it behind closed doors. No one needs to know
Right.
about this. Jesus, for the love of God.
Right.
Oh my God.
Or really,
Yeah.
like before my daughter, I never put my daughter's image out there.
Yeah.
Now she's almost 18. She can do what she wants. If she has her own account, I don't even check it, but between her and God. But
Okay.
me, I never put my daughter's image out there at all.
Let's talk about this for a second. So you place quite a lot of trust in her as far as like navigating social media and being safe. Is there any particular things you've told her, like, hey, stay away from this, be conscious of this, or you just trust her implicitly and just let her get on with it?
Like me and Quiana, we call them PSAs. We used to gather the girls in the living room and we used to just say, don't do this, don't be stupid about this. And it comes to like when I do trust her.
Yep.
Like I was telling her, I was like, you post naked pictures if you want to, but guess what? You will have to get a job. And if somebody sees your tatas out there and you really want this job, you're not getting it. So be careful. And
Right.
hey, life, I have a way of like, life will get you. Life lessons.
Yeah.
That's how I'm like, I'm not gonna punish you for it, but you'll learn. It'll bite you in the back. I mean, I basically raised her like I wanted to be. I treated her like I want to be treated.
Yeah.
I'm gonna leave you alone until you mess up.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I
I
told her, I was
agree.
like, yeah, because like even with like, so you're posting this and I was like, if some 30-year-old comes to you and you're 17, he doesn't want you for what you think. It's not love. That's
Right.
just predatory. What, you're 30 and he's 17. What do you have in common? You have nothing in common.
I said this
So,
on a
yeah.
live stream the other day because we were talking about the idea of like the power dynamic thing. So it's like, even if it is legal or whatever, it's still just dodgy because it's like,
Yeah.
do you know what I mean? As you say, you've got nothing in common, and this person should be around people their age and they're not, and it's like, that's probably a big red flag right there. You need to just avoid this person. But the trouble
I
is,
think
like,
that's right. I think it is like a power trip.
yeah.
I think whether it's a man or a woman, if they're, I don't know, to me, anything over, I don't know, 7, 8, 9 years, like what do you really have in common at a certain point? Like a 18-year-old, like she said, 18-year-old with a 30-year-old. For what? You have absolutely nothing in common, nothing to bring to the table other than, in my opinion, I can mold this person. I can mold them into what I want them to be. I can control them. That, I don't know. That's how I think about it. Even for a woman, when they say, like, I don't know, especially at our age now, I could be considered a cougar. I think it's still about power. If I have money and he doesn't, I'm going to get you to do what I want you to do because I have something that you don't.
Yeah, it's a dodgy dynamic, really. I mean, I feel like a grown adult, let's say, like, if you're like 24, 25, something like that, I think you're old enough to kind of make your own decisions. But at the same time, as you say, when there's an influence like money, power, I don't know, jobs, sometimes people do things because of, oh, well, I'm your boss, or I'm, in some way I can help you with your career, something like that. Like, you've got to be careful about stuff like that, because it can really just be used against you, and you can find yourself caught in a situation where you don't know how to get out of. I think the trouble is, especially with a lot of younger women, is they see like older guys and they think like, oh, he's mature, no one at my age is mature. And it's like, yeah, but if he's interested in you, that's a problem, because he's a fully grown man. Like, he shouldn't be anywhere near you. And yeah, all right, it might be frustrating that guys your age are not mature enough, but like, in time, when you go up, they will be mature. And like, not every single person is immature, but it's, I don't know, it's you live, you learn, I suppose, sometimes.
I remember like this one time, and you're gonna laugh, Quiana. I remember this one time, like, I was really in love with, when I was around Danny's age, probably around 18, 20, somewhere around there. I was really in love with this one dude, Wildflower, we called him. You remember Leroy? And I was like, my mother hated him, and rightfully so. And I was like, Ma, God sent him. I believe God sent him to me. My mother's like, yeah, well, the devil sends people too. So, and that's what I think about that whole what you said about like women, who have that power dynamic where, they're young and, they're impressionable and whatever. Yeah, the devil sends people too. Just because he seems mature doesn't mean he probably is. Like if you're 17 and 30, you don't know anything, or 18 and 30, you don't know anything. So he does seem mature. But if you put him in a 40-year-old's eyes, you'll be like, that dude still has nothing. He's not even mature, but you don't know that. And sometimes with your daughters, you got to let them live and learn. Because I know I can attest, there have been many times, like many people have been like, yeah, that dude does not seem safe. You know what I mean? But you're like, but he's dreaming me. And well, you had to learn the hard way. That just is what it is. But I mean, when it comes to like, I was telling, you've seen like some stories where like in high school, or like there's a 15-year-old and an 18-year-old. I have a little problem with that, but not much. 16 and 18, still don't have a problem with it. Like sophomore, senior. But if you're like 18 and my daughter's in middle school, now we got problems. Or if you're like, I'm 18 and you're like 25, because I always say at 25, you're kind of basically baked. You already know who you are, and you're trying to get an 18-year-old. I got issues. And especially with women and cougars, especially our age, you have younger dudes that always are like, oh, I want a MILF. I can't, no, I was 22. I know where you're going. I know who you are. Ick. Ick, ick, ick. Because I don't see Quiana with a 22-year-old. If she did, I'd be like, you missing a son?
Absolutely not. I'll stay single.
I can't imagine. I mean, nah. I mean, think about it.
I want no
He's
parts
22.
of anybody that age. No.
Right. I mean, I think about the women who do that. They're like, you're 40. Let's say you're 40, and you're going with a 20-year-old. He wasn't born when you were 20. Imagine, that's just gross. At that point, it's ick. That's raising babies.
Mm-hmm.
This is weird, man.
Okay. Sorry.
No. I agree. Let's move on. Let's bring it back to Gen X. What do you think?
Okay, sorry.
No. Hey, no apology. I like. This is what I mean about this show. I like it to go in different directions and talk, because these are all relevant things about life, aren't they? And it's. I think particularly with the generational divides, it's even though I will say this about like security online and stuff like that, is that you get taught about these things, but sometimes people have to make the mistakes for themselves, and it's not ideal. But I remember my mum sitting me down and having the conversations about online stuff, and she didn't know really about online stuff, but she was just trying to be a good parent, and I was always a pretty wise kid. I listened to my mum, I did what I was told, and I was lucky in that respect. But I had friends that did some really scary stuff, and they were lucky that nothing happened. But it's just terrifying out there in online. Sometimes you have to be really, really careful who you're dealing with.
Mm-hmm.
But what do you think are the defining characteristics of Gen X?
Apathy. I think we don't trust nobody. I mean, we are always looking like we're skeptical, and also we are feral. Like when we say feral children, we are feral children. Like our parents weren't tracking us. There was nothing to track.
Latchkey. Mm-hmm.
Latchkey. You mean we had like, remember the string around your neck, like the mom had like a shoelace around your neck around, and you had the key on the bottom, and you tucked that under your shirt so nobody could see it. Yeah, we had that, and we were based, and also independence. Our parents were like, do this and you better learn. It wasn't like they sat there and taught us stuff. It was like, all right, we'll teach you once and you better get it. Otherwise, there are consequences.
What do you think future generations can learn from Gen X?
I think the independence. I really feel like the generations that are coming up are so dependent upon everybody else to do everything for them. I'm not sure about millennials, but like kids that are coming up now. Like she said, we had to do everything for ourselves. And I don't think that's the case now. You know, it's a lot of hand holding. I saw a little clip. Somebody was talking about how what if like in a game, okay, in a race, there was one winner. Everybody didn't get a reward, and now kids are like, I want it, and everybody gets something instead of like learning that you have to work hard to get it. It's just not handed out because you are who you are.
Yeah, it's a tricky one. I mean, I can understand, excuse me, the mindset behind wanting to celebrate people's individuality and our differences as beings. But at the same time, yeah, like there's nothing wrong with teaching like competition and the idea of a winner and a loser. And I think a better thing to try and teach someone is that it's okay to lose. Do you know what I mean? There's this real fear in society of like, oh, if I lose, I'm a failure. And it's like, that's no, do you know what? Like losing is the most valuable thing you can ever do, because that's when the lessons come. If you win all the time, you don't learn shit. Like losing is what teaches you the real lessons in life, because then you can kind of go back and understand, well, okay, why didn't I win? What was that? Was that because I just wasn't lucky this particular time? Is it because there's a fundamental thing that I need to change? You know, I mean, I think you learn so much about yourself through the hard times and the failures in life. And, you know, this is why I've always thought that things like sports and gym and all of these, like I always tell my followers to go to gym, not so much because it's good for them and their body and their fitness. It's more about what it will teach you in life. Like for me, it teaches me motivation, discipline, the idea that sometimes, you know, you'll have your best days in the gym and you'll absolutely kill it, and the next day maybe you won't do as much, maybe you won't be able to push yourself as hard, but as long as you push yourself to the best that you can on that day, that's enough. There's lessons like that you don't always learn, you know, in a textbook or whatever. Like you just have to learn them through life experience. And I think with the modern mentality now is they don't want to make people feel bad about themselves, and I understand that, but I think there's a way to kind of get around that, to kind of reframe it and show people like, hey, it's okay, you just need to look at this a slightly different way.
I remember go ahead.
No, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I remember like when we were kids and we had field day. And they used to give out ribbons. You were like, the red ribbon was like first place was blue, second place was red, and then after that you got ribbons. And if you sucked, you sucked. And that was what we were taught as kids. Like at the close of the end of the year, if you got a yellow ribbon, you'd be like, at least you tried. You know what I mean? Or if you got a white, it's like you suck. You know what I mean? It's just what you got. And people used to display all their ribbons. You know, it was like, hey, I got one good blue one. I didn't get them all, but hey, and that's why we learn, especially with competition. And I wish my daughter had a field day. So when she was in elementary, I was like, yeah, what is my daughter going to get? She was like, we all got ribbons. For what? And she was like, because we all participated. I was like, I was mad because I was hoping to, like, you know, get so she could get a yellow ribbon. I mean, you know, well, maybe a red ribbon or something like that. But nope, they don't teach competition.
It reminds me when I was at school and college. Like I remember in particular at college, I got an award for attendance. And I was like, what's this? And they were like, oh, it's an attendance award. I'm like, so you're giving me an award for being here? Just showing up. Yeah. Plus, this particular college course, I was paying to go, so I would have been a fool not to show up. Do you know what I mean? And then, like, bringing it back to school, I remember we did school awards, and there was one kid in our year who got 100% attendance for like he'd never missed a day of school ever. Which, okay, that's kind of an achievement. But at the same time, I sat there thinking, like, what, you never had a sick day? You never, what? Like, how? And also, just, I don't know, I felt like a bit of sadness hearing that. As much as I wanted to be happy for the guy, I just felt like, dude, that sucks. Like, well, we used to sometimes bunk off and have the time of our lives. Not saying you should do that, by the way, but just,
Right.
I don't know, like, it wasn't
I
all
did it.
about school. Like, it was the other stuff we did.
Yeah.
Like, and he was very studious, and you could tell he was really happy with it and proud of it, and good for him. But like, just, I never understood that. Well done for showing up.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right. I mean, a
But I
job is
think
not going
that's
to
the
reward you.
problem. Sorry, go
No,
ahead.
I'm saying a job is not going to reward you for being on time. Ooh,
Mhm.
they're going to be like, good, because you got paid. I mean, what are we giving out awards for?
Right. Yeah.
That's
And
the
I
thing.
think
Go on.
that's the problem, is that they're so used to, again, having everything handed to them that they, like, if they lose, it's like, oh my gosh. Instead of like as they're growing up, somebody saying it's okay that you lost. But like you said, what did you learn from that? And since they're not getting that, they have this mentality of, I deserve everything because I want it, just because, not because I worked for it, not because I did anything to get it, just because I want it.
People say
And
that. Go on. Keep going.
No, I was just gonna repeat that.
Well, I was going to tag on to that with my generation, so millennials and Gen Z, a word that gets thrown around a lot is the idea of entitlement. Where do you think that originates from? Because I remember, okay, I will say this: like, as much as I grew up in the millennials age range, I mean, you know, I grew up in a poor household. Like, me and my mum didn't have much. I remember always just being massively grateful for anything. Like, I was just proud that there was food on the table and, you know, a roof over our heads. And, you know, we made the best of it. Like, I don't ever remember being sad. And I remember my mum would be apologetic sometimes, like, oh, I'm sorry, Chris, I'm sorry, we can't do this, or we can't afford to do this. And I was like, happy. Like, I was like, I never got that. And I think she was always grateful for that. But I feel like that was just purely because of her parenting that I had that attitude. But, you know, as I've gotten older, I've realized there is this kind of sense of entitlement that people have, like instant gratification culture, and, you know, this idea that okay, listen up, guys, for younger folks. Everything in life that you want, you have to work for it. Life isn't going to give you anything. You have to work for it. Like, everything I ever had, I had to work for it. I wasn't given it on a plate. I had to work for it.
Yeah.
Where does it come from, this entitlement?
I'm going to tell you that I think that it has a lot to do with the way we grew up. So, like, for me, I feel like a lot of the things I feel like I missed or I didn't have, I give it to them because I didn't have it. And I think that's for a lot of people who have children that are our ages, you know, teenagers and stuff. Like, there was a lot of, you know, different things that we didn't talk about, different things that, and now I'm like, everything I feel like I didn't have, everything I feel like I was supposed to have, I try to give that to them. And I think that's where the entitlement comes from, because they get things that they don't necessarily, you know, like when we were kids, if we got in trouble, they took something away in the story. I'm more lenient, and like the older they get, I'm like, ugh, I probably shouldn't have did that. I probably should have taken it away.
I'm on the other
Because
side
now
of
it's
it.
like, if I want to say I'm going to take it away, why?
Right.
Why are you doing this?
I'm on the other side of it where, like, I have an only child. I was raised an only child. I have an only child. And the other side of it is, like, when my mother was around, right? Remember we were kids and we wanted cheese on our Whoppers, or we wanted cheeseburgers? They were like, what do you need that for? It's just 10 cents worth of cheese. We have that at home. So one time, I'll never forget. Yes, I have that at home. So I remember one time I was at Burger King and me and my mother were getting burgers, and I was like, all right, Danny doesn't need cheese on her Whopper. Oh, yes, she does. She deserves cheese. I'm like, whoa, wait. You were the same person that said I couldn't have cheese on my Whopper because we have cheese at home. But that's where it's also like, if you're living with your parents and you have grandparents, oh, the grandparent has a whole lot to say. And they are like, well, she deserves this. And I'm like, do you remember parenting me? Do you remember parenting
me? Yeah. Yes.
They interfere a whole lot, in which you don't give them, oh, they will give them. And that's where some of that entitlement comes from. They deserve this. And I'm like, but you didn't show up to my play. Well, that's not the problem, but you should. Wait a minute. Wait a minute.
Yes.
And that's what we're going through.
My daughters have designer handbags right now from their grandmother that I could never afford. Right. But it's like, oh, they're my grandbabies and they need this. No, they don't.
My daughter, my mother like provided a whole wardrobe. Her closet was always stacked with clothes. And I'm like, well, when we were kids, we were poor too. And we had like layaway and yeah, that was different times. I'm like, poor at any time. I'm like, no. But that's where they get spoiled at, because if mom and dad don't do it, grandparents. And when my daughter goes to Kenyan, because my husband's Kenyan, oh, she's treated like royalty. Like, she walks on the ground. Anything she said, I want to go to see a kangaroo, they will go and probably fund the trip to Australia and do this, and they will go get it. And I'm like, well, crap, what do you do with that as parents? What do you do? And I'm like, you forgot how you used to parent me. Well, different times. I'm learning from my mistakes. Well, crap.
Yeah.
It's these things. And so that's why they're entitled to stuff, is because of that. It's weird. They're weird.
It hurts to laugh right now.
But it's so true. And it was like, wow. I don't get cheese. She gets cheese on her Whopper, but I couldn't get mine. Remember the hamburger stand, the 99-cent hamburgers? And if you got like 20 more cents, we could got cheese on that. You know, to this day, I'm scarred by that. I will get cheese on my burger every time because of that crap right there.
I remember my nan was like that. Weirdly, I had the reverse. My mum was always like, try and give me whatever she could give me, you know, because my nan was really strict. My mum was also strict, but in a different way. Like, she gave me a lot of freedom when I was a teenager. She was always very fair. She was like strict but fair, you know. She's very like that. So I respect the way my mum did it. But I do remember going to my nan's house, and there were things that used to drive me nuts. I'll give you a few examples. So on the topic of food, when it came to ice cream and the ice cream van came, that's a big thing in the UK. But like, oh, ice cream. She's like, we've got ice cream in the fridge. And I'm like, oh, but it's not the same. And she's like, you get what you're given.
Yep. That's how we were.
Yep. Yeah.
Right. All right then. But the other one that used to drive me unbelievably nuts. Let's say she's preparing dinner and I want a snack. May I please have ice cream from the fridge? No, you can't eat before your dinner. Why? Because I said so. But why? Because I said so. See, my mum would always painstakingly sit down and explain exactly why. And I used to accept that. I was like, oh, okay, that makes sense. But my nan would never do that. She was always like, nope. I've since found out with my younger cousins and brothers, apparently she's lenient now, but she sure as hell wasn't with me. So, yeah.
I think maybe your grandmother is like on the same generation with our parents, because that's how it was with us. There's no question. I'm not answering anything just because I said so.
That's it.
I hated that. My mum used to get a lot of criticism for the way she brought me up, because she would get told, oh, you can't talk to him like an adult. You can't do that. He's not an adult. And it's like, no, but by doing that, he will understand, and then I don't have to scream, shout, get upset with him. He just gets it. Because I would listen to her and I'd do what she said, and I wouldn't act out or anything, because she showed that level of respect. And she got criticized from everything, from family, friends, school, like you name it. And in the end, it worked out better because if she was like, don't do this, I'd be like, okay. And then when she calmed down, I'd be like, why? It's fine.
Yeah, if we ask why, bam! What did I tell you? What did I tell you? Okay.
Yeah.
You don't ask questions. And tell me I'm wrong, Quiana. Tell me I'm wrong. Yeah, you don't ask questions. It was this, I told you so. And if you talk back, are you talking back to me? Are you talking back to me? Okay. You never.
It was some trauma that we have some therapy for now.
Yep.
I remember in the few occasions that I ever gave my mum rudeness or trap back, whew, she'd just give me that look like, excuse me? What the did you say?
Right.
And I think the worst thing, because I love my mum to bits, but like she really would like just destroy me for ages. Like I think the worst thing was the lecture. So you get sat down and she'd just talk for like an hour and go again and again and again, and to the point where I was so bored to tears that I just would never do it again because I didn't want to be lectured for an hour again. I was like, you've said this 5. Do you understand? Yes, I understood it the first 5 times you said it. Oh, you're answering back, and then no, that's another 10 times.
See, at least you got the lecture. We got. What did I say? Bam. And then that was it. That's a 2-second conversation, and then that was it. And they walk away. Away with pride. You're like, and you're over here like, they were like, are you crying? Are you crying? Don't cry.
I'll give you something to cry for.
I'll give you something to cry for. Nah. That's
yeah,
why
I'll give you something to cry about. I remember that.
Yeah. And that's where how we were brought up. That's why we're like, y'all wonder why we're silent? It's because of stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
You don't talk,
Mm-hmm.
you don't snitch, you keep whatever you need to keep inside, and you keep it pushing. That's you wanted to explain what a Generation X is? That's it right there. We don't talk about crap.
Did you ever get hit with the?
But I think that's the therapy now, is that we're trying to work through that because it created a lot of issues because we felt like we had to be silent. And I think that's the point of our podcast now, is to say, hey, these things happen, but now here we are trying to make changes because of that.
Is there any particular avenues you want to explore with this podcast other than just kind of talking about Gen X in general? Like any particular goals you have with it?
My particular goal is like, I want to actually bring voice to our generation. We have something to say, and it's our time to say it. We're older now, and we can actually, not only teach the younger generation, but basically we're not only going, most of us are parents to Gen Z kids, and they were also parents to our parents now because they're older. And having to be parents to both people, that creates some psychological, we need to get it out. And for our generation, we weren't brought up to have therapy, especially in the Black community. Therapy is like for crazy people. That's what we were taught. Like, what do you do? Are you crazy? No, you don't need therapy. Pray to God. You'll be all right. We need to get this out. Otherwise, we're going to be crazy. You know what I mean? Because there's a whole lot of, when your parents are 2 different generations where you have to respect your mother, which she's driving you batshit crazy. And then now you have your daughter and she's doing some stuff. She's driving you batshit. Where you go? And you want to be heard, and you want to know. And we also want to, like, other people are going through this. Because you can't be the only one.
Yeah.
Can't just be me that feels this way.
Right.
Yeah.
I get it.
And I think that's the point of it, is that, we're going through things and having a place where we can talk about that and talk about, what do we do from here? How do we make changes? Is it okay to make changes based on the things that we're going through?
And undo the stuff that our parents kind of really did, teach our kids better. Like, I really never hit my daughter. When she was little, maybe one spanking, and that was it. It was mostly lectures. That wasn't offered to me as a kid. We had to go get our own switches, our own belts. That's like, if that's not trauma, I don't know what is. I can't tell you to go get the weapon that you want to hit me with. that's not. So I've never hit my kid. Really, I haven't. Like, I swatted her on the butt one time, and I was like, nah, I can't do that. And mostly, she's the better for it. You know,
Mm-hmm.
that's what I think.
Mm-hmm.
But they would call us punk parents.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know, man. I think there's if you can dish out some kind of let's say punishments without hitting your kids, I think that's an achievement. You know, especially if you can kind of create an air like where you do the classic like look like, and then they're like, okay, just little things like that. You know, creating more of an atmosphere rather than, you know, because I think as well sooner or later, let's say you go too far the other extreme and you set that as a precedent, then, you know, eventually that's not going to work. It's just not going to be enough of a deterrent, so to speak. And it's, you know, I know everyone has different opinions on this. My mum used to hit me a little bit, nothing too crazy before anyone gets any ideas. It was like, you know, within normal parenting levels, you know.
Right.
And, you know, it kind of worked, but it didn't. I felt like what worked more was when we would sit down and talk about things, to be honest. That was like, sometimes she deserved to get angry, annoyed at me. You know, I was never like a naughty kid. I was just rude and a bit too, you know, knowledgeable for my own good. And she knew that. And I think one of the biggest things my mum taught me, and I'll never forget this, she sat me down, she said, do you understand why I'm so hard on you? And I was like, why? And she said, I don't want you to go out there and get a smack in the face. You need to understand what respect is about. And that if you don't show other people respect and you don't treat people with respect, it's going to cause you some serious problems. And it's not until this age right now that I'm starting to begin to see that in adult life. I see other people that clearly were not raised properly continually having problems because they don't understand the basic respect thing. Because look, not every human being is raised the same way, not everyone is the same, but you can approach each person that you meet with respect and learn to kind of, I don't know how to put it exactly, but adapt to them somewhat. You know what I mean? Like some people you can be a bit more chill with because they're more similar to yourself. Some people are a bit more reserved, so you got to respect that. Like, it all comes down to respect, and that was the thing she tried to hammer home for me, and that's why she was so strict, and it worked. And you know, these days I'll be sitting down going, thank you for how you did it. You know, it wasn't always right, it wasn't always 100% on, but for the most part you got it right, and I think she would agree too. So you know.
Yeah, because I mean, like I sit down with my daughter and I want her to come to me with stuff instead of like I try to hide it. I was like, you know, if you can't go to your parents, I mean, my mother she was a little bit liberal, but she still was conservative, God knows. But there's certain stuff that I had to hide from her and had to learn on my own, you know, because I couldn't go to her with everything. Otherwise, it wouldn't only be a lecture, it'd be disappointment, and then sometimes a backhand. Until I was a teenager, you know, she stopped hitting me. She was like, the one time she stopped hitting me was because I looked at her like, I'm older now. I just had that look like, you can't hurt me. She was like, yeah, it was time. I was like, that's when you decided it was time? Okay. But, you know, but, you know, it was, we couldn't. It's just something you just don't do. Like, you know, but we have, like, we're open with our kids and too much. We kind of overshare. At least, you know, you should hear the conversations we have.
I don't think it's oversharing when you're just trying to keep them from, I don't know, to me, I'm always like, I don't want you to go down the same road as me. So if I have to tell you something that you might not want to hear, but you're going in that direction, I want to keep you from that. And I think that is part of the reason why our relationship is so good, because like Tasha said, I can trust what they're going to do. I don't have to monitor their social media. I don't have to monitor because you know right from wrong, because we've had those conversations.
Absolutely.
So
pretty much.
Right, I got a couple of final quick fire questions for you ladies. I'm interested to see how you approach these.
Okay.
What's the best advice you've ever received?
You feel this one. I'm trying to remember. I'm trying to channel my grandmother. They gave me so much. Our granny, and my mother gave me so much wisdom over the years. It's like trying to channel one. I forgot. What do you got?
Just
Pretty much.
give 100%. Give 100% at everything you try.
And be yourself, pretty much.
Mm-hmm.
That was basically it. I'm trying to remember. You just got. I like. There's like a flood coming out. Right? I was like, "What did she say?"
I wasn't listening.
I was, but it was like, dang, it's
Yeah.
to me so much. I'm trying to remember some quotes, and I can't remember right now. But yeah, it was a whole lot.
Well, here's a different question, similar vein, but more personal to you. What's the biggest life lesson you've learned so far?
Time is not your friend. Time is not your friend. At one point, I'll never forget, in my 20s, I was like, I have all the time in the world. I'm 44, and I'm like, man, time is becoming, it's kind of slipping just a little bit, you know? That's what I'm learning now.
Damn, that's deep. That hit me, man. It's true. I'm starting to see that now. I turned 30 this year, and I'm like, shit, man. I can no longer sort of say I'm an ignorant young man anymore. It's like, no, I'm just a man now. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I just got to try and get it right more times than I get it wrong.
What do you got? So, Quiana?
Forgive myself for past mistakes and move forward. Don't let what happened in the past kind of say who I am now.
Yeah, that's an important one, because we're always changing as well. We're never the same person 10 years from now, 5 years from now, whatever. But sometimes we can torture ourselves with the past, and we really shouldn't.
Yeah, because I can think of, like, if something happens to me now, like something negative, I'll be like, dang, is that because of that man that I slept with 20 years ago? Like, I don't know. You know, like, shit.
Okay.
You know, but Lord, that was 15 years ago. We're going to let that go and move forward. Sometimes bad things just happen.
So I was watching the Walking Dead earlier, and there's a bit where Daryl was talking to some kid, and he's trying to give him advice, and something really serious has happened, and he just turns to the kid, and it's a serious moment, but he said, "Sometimes life is just shit." And I was just like, fair play, man. That's true.
Yeah.
It's not wrong.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Oh my God. As we draw things to a close, ladies, do you have any upcoming projects you'd like to share, or some final thoughts?
Well, as far as for my final thought is that we're coming out. This podcast is like, we're the Gen X. We're coming out. We're basically starting to tell the truth, and we're coming out, and we have a voice. We're not the silent generation anymore. We're not gonna sit back and be seen and not heard as that what we've been taught. We're coming out, and we got some advice for y'all. We really do. Hopefully you'll listen. If you don't, well, that's life. And
we're also gonna have fun. We have a lot of serious topics, but like, we're gonna have a lot of fun discussing different things, and I think it'll be fun to watch and grow with us.
Well, we look forward to hearing it, and it's been an absolute pleasure having you both on the show. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And to the listeners of the Christian Reeve Podcast, as always, be safe, be well, and I'll see you in the next one.